What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Project Parker. Welcome to the channel, Project Potter. My name is Kyle, guys, your host, and tonight, guys, we are doing The Amazing Spider-Man, the 2012 film, the first movie, I should say, with Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, the first post-Raimi Spider-Man movie. So this was a big deal when it came out, guys. I am excited because I've seen the two Amazing Spider-Man movies easily the least out of any Spider-Man movie. Like, this might be my second time ever watching this movie. My name is Kyle, your host. Thanks for checking out the channel. If you haven't seen the series before, guys, every single night here leading up to No Way Home, we're reviewing every Spider-Man movie, all the live action, and then we did Spider-Verse to kick off the series, guys. So go check out those reviews. Appreciate you guys stopping by. What we're doing is my favorite scenes, some of the issues I had with the movies, and then the score of 10 and the rankings. So if you guys have not been following along, maybe some surprises in there for you, especially with Spider-Man 2, maybe. But I stick by my opinion, guys, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. And here we go. So, guys, things I really, really like in this movie. Number one, the swinging. The swinging is amazing, dude. All of the action sequences. While the Raimi trilogy has some really great shots, I mean, I talked about in Spider-Man 3, guys, that the scene where he saves Gwen Stacy, different Gwen Stacy, but when Tobey goes and saves that Gwen Stacy, all that stuff is really awesome. There's amazing stuff with the Goblin, and then obviously against Doc Ock. The Raimi trilogy has great action, and I don't think that can be topped here. But guys, we get first-person swinging Spider-Man in this. This is really cool. We just get like really awesome shots. I will say, guys, right now, Tobey had a great woo. I'm pretty sure Andrew Garfield has the best woo of all the Spider-Men. I mean, it's awesome, dude. He's like legitimately excited. It's like Andrew Garfield is such a cool dude where it's like it took me a while to warm up to him in this movie. This movie kind of starts really slow. Like the first hour is kind of a slog, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting choice. It like opens up with Peter like being silent, but like walking around the house, and then he goes into like his father's lab or office, I should say, not lab, but it's all like thrown around, like it's all like someone just robbed it. And I'm like, what's going on here, dude? And then he just goes, he's like, Dad, and his dad comes in, Richard Parker, and then like they're like, oh, you have to stay with Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and then they like go away, which is sad. But then we find out they like died in a plane crash. But I don't know, it's weird. I was like, this is such a strange way to open this movie. Not Tobey. Wow, dude. I'm still in Raimi mode. Andrew Garfield's character, Peter Parker, you guys know Peter Parker? He's completely silent. And it's just weird that he doesn't have any dialogue. Like, I don't know. It's a really strange choice to open the movie, but scenes that stick out to me, especially, dude. Probably my favorite scene in the movie is when Peter's looking for Uncle Ben's killer, and he's looking for the guy with the star tattoo, which I thought was weird. And the criminal, I think, looked like kind of a douchebag. But he's like going around, he's stopping all these criminals, and they're like, oh, he's like a vigilante. He's a masked vigilante. And he's got like a homemade suit, although it looks kind of dumb. It doesn't look cool like the homemade Tom Holland suit, which we'll get to. This one, I was like, okay. But I like the idea of it. Whenever you see Spider-Man, it's always got that crappy first suit. But my favorite scene, guys, has got to be when he goes in there, he thinks he's got the carjacker, and he's sitting in the back seat, and the carjacker's like sitting there. He doesn't notice him, and he's like, ahem. And then he's like, whoa, who are you, a cop? And he's like, seriously? He's like, you think I'm a cop? He's like wearing a skin tight red and blue suit. And then the guy starts like freaking out. He starts getting out. And he's like, oh yeah. And he webs the door closed. And then he's sitting there and he's like, no, yeah, try that. And then he webs it closed again. And then he's like, oh yeah, the window will really work well for you. And he gets out, and like, this is the quippy Spider-Man I wanted, dude. He's so cool in this one. And the guy's like terrified. He looks over, Spidey's gone in the back seat, and you're like, what's happening? And then he comes in, he's like, crotch shot. And then he like goes on him, dude. And then he's like, oh, okay, that's it. And the guy takes out a knife, and he's like, oh my God, is that a knife? He's like, yeah, it's a knife. And he's like, is that a real knife? He's like, yeah, it's a real knife. And he's like, oh my God, small knife. Oh my God, it's my biggest fear. And it's like, and then he just immediately webs it up, and he's like, what is this? And he's like, oh, dude, you don't want to know. And then he webs his other hand, and he's like, seriously, what is this? And he's like, oh, it's just web I designed myself, and it's like, this is cocky Peter Parker. This is dope ass Peter Parker. We know Peter Parker's been really smart. We saw that with glimpses of Tobey, but Tobey was always so awkward as Spider-Man. He was never like cool Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield is a badass motherfucker in this movie as Spider-Man. He's so cocky, almost a little too much, where he like, he's got these super reflexes, and he's like, the cop goes over, and the cop comes up, and he's like got a gun at him, and then Andrew like dodges it super quick, dude. And I was like, oh, that was really cool looking. And then he's like, I just did 80% of your job. And I was like, oh, okay, dude, like, calm down a little bit here. I know you're excited about the powers, but like, let's chill out a little bit. So there's this adversity between the cops and Peter. I really like that stuff. And then obviously we get Dennis Leary later, guys. Dennis Leary is awesome in this movie. But I probably should have mentioned this first, but the number one thing or my favorite aspect of this movie, dude, it's Gwen Stacy and Peter's relationship. Andrew Garfield is a little awkward for my taste at the beginning, where he's like, really, like, some of the dialogue is like almost laughably bad, but he's just kind of like this nervous kid, and Emma Stone like reacts to it in such a cute way where she like laughs at it, and it's so realistic. Guys, all of their interactions are adorable. They have like, their chemistry is popping off the screen. Like, I was like, dude, I don't know if Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield hooked up during this movie, like in real life, but I would not be shocked if they didn't. Like, oh my God, like the kiss scenes and stuff, it's so great. When they have the dinner scene, which is an amazing scene too, and Dennis Leary is saying like, oh, he's a masked vigilante. He's like, why does he hide his face? You know, he's out there stopping criminals or whatever, but he's assaulting people or whatever. And he's like, assaulting people. He's like, what are you talking about? He was just doing it, trying to help the police. And he's like, well, what do you mean help the police? And he's like, well, he's doing something the police can't do. And he's like, the police can't do. He's like, what do you think we do? Just sit on our asses all day, eat donuts with our thumbs up our asses? And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's actually a really great conversation. And then they go on the balcony, and it's just really great because it's like Dennis Leary plays a great dad character where he's really stern, but he's not too stern. And Andrew Garfield doesn't really back down from him. I should call him Peter, but I feel like I just got off of so much Toby, which is not a bad thing, that I'm just like, calling him Peter, I feel like would just mix me up. So we'll probably call him Peter, but we're going to call him Andrew for the most of this review. He kind of stands up to Dennis Leary's character here. Then he like gets a little aggressive, but then he goes, look, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. And he's like, look, the food was delicious, Mrs. Stacy. And it's like, he's such a sweet kid at the same time. And it's like, you can see why Emma Stone is like, I can get into this. They go to the balcony, and he's like, I got to tell you something. And he's like, really nervous. And this really bothered me the first time I think I watched this movie, when this came out in 2012. But guys, pretty much a decade later, as a 30-year-old man, I'm watching this and I'm like, I can appreciate some of this social awkward, like Andrew Garfield. He's got that cute attitude, man. Like Emma Stone, I can see why she's into it, dude. But he's like, I can't tell you. And she like gets frustrated. She's like, oh, fine. She like walks away. And that's what, guys, when he pulls out the sexiest move probably in the history of cinema. He whips a web over there and pulls her in close, and she's like, oh my God. Like, she's literally like, oof. And then they start kissing, and it's a hot kiss. I mean, what can I say, guys? Their chemistry is just Toby and oh wow, why am I just blanking on her name? Toby and Kirsten Dunst never even sniffed the type of chemistry that Andrew and Emma have in here. And also, guys, I'm watching this, and again, this is, I think, the second reference to La La Land on this series, which is weird. But obviously Emma Stone, the big star of that. Every time I watch Emma Stone, guys, I think I like fall in love with Emma Stone. And again, 2012, Kyle watching this, I would have been like, I was a dumb, like 20-year-old kid, right? And I was like, this movie. I was like, cool, it's Jules from Superbad. Like, okay, she was okay there. Now I'm like, dude, Emma Stone is such an accomplished actress, and it's like I love her and everything she does, and she was just so good in La La Land and all this stuff, and she's just got so much charisma, and she's just, every scene she's in, it's just so good. And when Andrew and Emma get together, it really is like they're so realistic with their relationship and their dynamic, and it's like you can tell they're just both into each other. It's just really awesome because it's such a believable Gwen and Peter. And it's also nice because we're not getting Peter Parker and Mary Jane. This is a complete dynamic shift where it's like we're getting Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, and it's a much better match than the Raimi trilogy. All due respect to Kirsten and Toby, it is it's night and day in this movie. So all that stuff, I think, guys, takes the cake. It's so good. Kurt Connors stuff is awesome too. He's a really good actor. I love that he's like obsessed with reptiles, and I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of weird, but then obviously it leads to like him regenerating. Another really cool aspect about this movie, guys, is that there's mention of Norman Osborn dying, and it's so cool because we never see Norman Osborn, but they're like, hey, we need to save his life, we need human trials to start like next week. And Kurt Connors is like, that's not going to happen, dude. He's like, who are we even going to get to test human trials? And they're like, how about the Veterans Center? And he's like, dude, you can't just infect people with lizard DNA, like old people with lizard DNA. They're all just going to die or turn into lizards like we see with Dr. Connors. And then he's like, okay, well, if like I'm going to pull your funding. And then that's when Dr. Connors is like, back to formula? No, he's not. But he's like, oh, okay. So then he like gets desperate and then like just tries like testing on himself and has a huge transformation when he goes to the bridge, guys. And we get another great scene. Andrew goes over there, shows up. I think it's actually right after the balcony thing. And they're like, oh my God, there's something on the bridge. And he's like, I got to go. And he swings off there. And I was like, do you have your suit on you, dude? But obviously he did. He's like carrying his backpack around. It's no nanotech suit, guys, let me tell you, but we're not there yet. He gets to the bridge and he sees freaking lizard Doc Connors going around. And also, guys, I didn't mention the Doc Connors scene when he's in the cab in taxi when he's first transforming is awesome. And they have a gross scene where he like unpeels the skin and it's like a arm or hand, but it's all like fat and like it's all slimy and stuff. I hate it. I hated the visuals of that. I mean, it's really cool, but I was like, oh, that just looks nasty. And so he gets in the cab and he's like, look, I got to stop the guy who's like wearing all black, typical generic like bad guy that's like, oh, I'm going to do this no matter what. And we have to save Norman's life. He like worked for Oscorp, whatever. And he's like, I got to go save him. Got to stop him on the bridge. And then he starts transforming real quick. He's like, drive now. But it's like, obviously the transformation is out of control. And so he's out there on the bridge and he starts like wrecking all the cars and stuff. But we find out that Doc Connors is like mostly in control. So he's like out of control in this scene. I don't know what's going on there, but Andrew shows up and, there's a bunch of cars dangling down there. He had like 5 cars webbed. So I don't know what was going on there because we only see him rescue one, obviously. But he goes in there and he's like, please, my son's down there. I think maybe those were just empty cars. I don't know. And he goes over and he drops down and the kid is scared. And he's like, look, I'm going to undo the seatbelt. And the kid's way too scared. And he's like, wait, here, buddy, look. And he takes his mask off, which is so cool because in the whole Raimi trilogy, they were like, you cannot take your mask off at all. And here Andrew is like, no one told him like, hey, you can't take your mask off. You need to keep your identity secret. And he heard the speech from Gwen's dad that like, this guy's running around. Why doesn't he show his face and stuff? And maybe he like took it to heart and he's like, you know what? I'm not trying to be a bad guy, but maybe I shouldn't have a mask on. And he takes the mask off and the kid calms down a little bit and he sees like his name on his pants or something or in a lunchbox or whatever. And he says, Jack. And he's like, Jack, come on. And then the car starts falling. And so like he flips up to the bridge and like he's holding onto the car and he's like, okay, Jack, you got to come over. And then the car lights on fire and it like immediately engulfs. And he's like, Jack, come on. And he's like, I can't do it. And he's like, you can. He's like, here, put on the mask. It'll give you power. And it's so cool, dude. Like, again, chills just thinking about it because he puts the mask on and the kid like starts going up there. And then there's like Andrew almost ruins the scene where he's like, okay, buddy, a little bit quicker. He's like, yo, get your ass out of this car if you want to live. Come with me if you want to live. Like, that's basically what he's saying. And the kid actually, I think he like loses the control of the bumper or whatever, and the car starts going down. The kid isn't there yet. And he's like, no. And Andrew says no. And then he throws the web at him and pulls the kid up. And I was like, oh my God. And like the relief on his face, dude, so well done. And then he brings it up, obviously, back to the kid. But I love that he has the web shooters that he designed. And this comes into play later, guys, when he's fighting Lizard. He breaks his web shooters because at the very, very end, guys, Kurt Connors saves him as he's transforming back into Kurt Connors. He actually reaches and saves him, but his arm is like disintegrating because he's being cured. And so he has to like switch hands. And I was like, why doesn't Andrew just whip up? But then I was like, oh wait, his shooters were destroyed because when he was a lizard man and trying to kill Peter, he like wrecked his web shooter. So now he's just like a kid dangling from a building. And I was like, oh, it's a really cool moment. So the shot behind me, obviously the ending shot. Oh my God, dude. I mean, I saw it in like the Marvel's PS4 Spider-Man, an amazing game that's like one of the loading screens where it's so cool. But I forgot that was this shot in this scene. All of the action scenes with Andrew too. We see so many unique things, guys. When he goes down in the sewer to face the lizard and he literally makes a spider web where he like sets it up so that he feels the vibrations on the different webs. Amazing, dude. We never saw anything like that in the Raimi trilogy. So I love that they're coming up with creative ideas to see like how this Spider-Man is different. Really, really awesome. And then just like obviously his like the lizard looks awesome, like amazing CGI there. It's like creepy when he goes in at the end fighting, not fighting, but when Gwen is doing the antidote at the end, and he goes in there and he stops and he's like, and he like makes a gross sound. I'm like, I don't like that, dude. I mean, I loved it, but I didn't like it. It's like the hand scene that gross. When he's fighting Lizard in the school earlier, he like literally goes around him like a spider, dude, like quickly wraps up its prey. It's just so cool because it's like he's acting like a spider more so than we ever saw Toby in the Raimi trilogy. And also there's like a scene where he climbs up the wall and it looks much cooler than Toby. So I don't know if that was just a knock on probably the 2002 Spider-Man, but yeah, just everything Spider-Man related is awesome. And then I also really liked Uncle Ben's interactions with Peter. There's that great emotional scene. First of all, I thought Ben was really, really good. Martin Sheen plays Ben. I just thought it was awesome that he was like keeping him in check, where the night that Peter goes to Kirk Connors and solves the equation where he finds his dad's old notes, and he's like, oh, you know, we're going to regenerate the mice thing. And then there's like, he goes and sees the huge fucking rat. And he wasn't like, Dr. Connors, there's a fucking huge, like 35-pound rat over here. Actually, that's probably way too low of a number. That was a big ass rat. That was probably an 80-pounder. Like, the thing was fucking huge. And he was probably like, we should probably do something about that. But he just kind of like, not my chair, not my problem, dude. He walks away, but yeah, I'm kind of going off track here, guys. But Ben, I thought all of Ben's scenes were great. I love that he was like keeping Peter in check, like I said, keeping him accountable. He doesn't give him the great power, great responsibility, but he does talk about that. Andrew, every time Andrew came up to like Emma Stone's bedroom, and she's like, he shows up in a fire escape, and she's like, how did you get up here? He's like, I climbed the fire escape. Your door guy was intimidating him. She's like, it's 20 stories high. And he's like, yeah. And it's like, I think that's when she started to kind of put two and two together there. But then, like, when he goes back in there, when she's treating his fucking deep gash wounds, where then she, like, gets turned on and she's like, you want to make out? And it's like, dude, she's, like, basically nursing him back to life. He has, like, fucking scar tissue damage for sure on his chest. And she's like, we could make out right now. And it's like, all right, well. He's like, let's get out of here, whatever. And she's like, I can't leave my parents. If my parents see me leaving, I'm dead. And he's like, oh, they're not going to see you leave. And then we get the cool scene where they're going through. I would have liked more scenes where she was like with him when he was swinging, because I thought we didn't get enough of that here. But yeah, just kind of going over some of the biggest scenes, guys. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but there were a lot of scenes that I really liked action-wise, and just these quick sequences and elements that I really liked in this movie. Okay, guys, things I did not like. Number one, Ben Parker's death scene. God, that was just like, I don't want to say lazy, but it was just so like anticlimactic. Honestly, when Andrew Garfield is trying to buy the chocolate milk for $2.07, and he's got 205, and then when he takes the pennies there, I was like, whoa, dude. The cashier was like, bro, you can leave pennies, you can't take them. And I was like, I'm on the side of the cashier here, dude. Like, you can't afford them. Now, what he should have said is, it's fine. I'll just, my drawer is 2 cents short. It's no big deal. But he was also like, bro, you can't afford your milk. He was kind of being aggressive, but I was totally like, yo, don't be taking fucking pennies that other people have left to pay for your shit. Now, would the cashier have just done that? Probably. Maybe. But I was just like, it's kind of a scummy move right there by Peter. But then, of course, the guy comes in, he puts the beer on there, but then he like intentionally spills the beer, but doesn't, to hold him up at gunpoint. He just like reaches into the cash register while that guy is looking down to take it, and then he tosses him the milk, like he's like, oh, what a good criminal, like what a respectable guy. And then he like runs into Ben in the street, but Ben is like, I don't know. He obviously leaves a voicemail with Peter, and when he goes out, because Peter like, storms out and shatters the front glass by accident, and then Ben's like going after him. But he's like taking a leisurely stroll. He's like not like, he's not like Peter. He's just like kind of chilling. He's like, oh, you know what? I can go for a nice walk or whatever. And Peter's also older, so it's not like he's chasing down like a 5-year-old kid or anything. But he just kind of runs into him, and then he like struggles with it and then ends up shooting him by accident. But then that criminal is like never apprehended, I don't think. Maybe because they focus on the lizard, but I don't know. It was just kind of like poorly, really poorly done, I thought. I will say, though, one thing I really like, not to go back to favorite scenes, but Andrew's emotion when he listens to the voicemail from Ben. I was like, oh my God, dude, like that really tugged at my heartstrings, because I was like, man, you have this voicemail that you checked, I'm sure, after the death, where he was like that's all he has left of him. And Toby didn't have anything left of Uncle Ben. At least Andrew has this, but it's so sad, dude. It reminds me of I think it's Civil War, where Zemo is like about to kill himself. Spoilers for Civil War. Go see that. It's an amazing MCU movie. Spidey's in that one as well. We're not doing that one for this review, but that's actually Spidey's debut in the MCU. But Zemo is like going to kill himself, and he's got a voicemail of like his wife or whatever. I forget the exact details, but he doesn't. That's all he has, and he keeps listening to it over and over. And it's like that's what it reminded me of here, where it was like, oh my God, dude, it's so sad. But and then at the end we hear the full voicemail, and it's really nice actually. But I hated the way they handled that death scene. Personally, I just thought it was awful. I mentioned before, guys, I warmed up to Andrew Garfield, but at the beginning I was like, this kid is so weird. Like, I didn't like the fact that nobody liked Peter for some reason, though, like, because he seemed like a cool kid. And so, like, Flash beats him up. I thought Flash was really annoying in this movie because they almost tried to, like, redeem him at the end, but there was no scene between Peter and Flash to be like, hey, man, I get it. Like, it's like your uncle died, and he's like, I lost uncle too once or whatever. Like, they didn't have that cliche scene. Like, Flash is just a douchebag to him. And then, like, Gwen yells at Flash in the beginning, and she's like, how about we try going to class, okay? And I like that Gwen is like keeping him in check there, dude. But then Flash is never really, it's not like in the Raimi trilogy where like Mary Jane was like kind of ignoring Peter and then going to hang out with Flash. And I know this is Gwen Stacy, not Mary Jane, but Gwen sticks up for Peter because she sends Peter, obviously. But Flash was just like one-dimensional here. We have the basketball scene, which I thought was really good, and where he's like, come on, Flash, just take the ball. And they're like, come on, Flash, what are you doing? And he's like, take it, Flash, just take it. But then Andrew Garfield, bro, you traveled on that play. I mean, and you shattered the backboard. What are you, Shaq, bro? Like, it was really cool until it's like those guys when you see like those Disney movies growing up where it's that famous meme where the quarterback goes back and like throws it so terribly. It just took me out of it because it was a really funny and cool scene. And I was like, oh, this Peter Parker's pretty badass. And then he takes the ball and he like dribbles it and he's like, come on. He's like, bring it, Parker. And I was like, oh, sweet. He's going to like cross him up or something. Then he just literally holds it like a running back, takes like 20 steps and obviously travels, fucking pushes Flash over. And in the slow-mo of him like going up for the dunk, I was like, oh God, this looks so bad, guys. Like horribly bad. I couldn't believe that made it into the movie. There were some dialogue lines early with Andrew and Emma where I thought, I was like, oh, I don't know, but obviously they like quickly get over that. And I love when he goes to the internship. Sorry, I don't mean to keep going back to good scenes, but talking about this movie, I'm like, wow, there's really a lot of good stuff in here. When he goes to the internship to Oscorp and he just takes, and she's like, okay, are you having trouble finding yourself? Like the receptionist. And he's like, nope, my badge is right here. She's like, great. She's like, okay, Rodrigo. And he's like, gracias. And then he goes in there and I was like, the Andrew Garfield charm is there, dude. But then it's funny because the real Rodrigo comes in later and he's like, no, he's like, tell him I'm here. And I'm like, wow, that kid loves internships. Like, and I was also like, yeah, that's fucked up that you took that kid's spot. I don't think he ever gets in any trouble for that, but he obviously goes up there and then the cute back and forth with him and Gwen is great. But again, I'm here to say things I didn't like about this movie. I feel like there's more. Oh, Aunt May. I didn't really like Aunt May in this movie. I like how she was supposed to be like this tough, like, aunt. But I just thought like she wasn't great with Peter. The end scene, guys. God, the end, the whole thing, at least in the Raimi trilogy, and I think in most of Spider-Man, is like Aunt May always knows that he's Spider-Man. Aunt May had no fucking idea at the end of this movie. So when Emma, the heartbreaking scene where Emma comes here, Gwen It is Emma Stone, but when Gwen comes to see Peter in the rain and she's like, there was a funeral. Why weren't you there? You were the only one that wasn't there. I don't know why he didn't say I was there. Maybe because the door was open and he wanted Aunt May to know. And then it's so heartbreaking when she says, like, he promised me, he made you promise to keep away from me. Wow. I can't speak right now. Gwen Stacy says, he made you to promise to stay away from me to keep me safe, right? And he's like, he doesn't say anything, but she's like, okay, I figured it out. And I'm like, oh, good for you, Gwen, because I was getting mad because he's like, I can't see you. And I was like, oh my God, I was getting so frustrated because I was like, dude, I can't stand this. I talked about in Spider-Man 2, guys. I can't stand the lack of communication that causes issues that could easily be solved with like a line of dialogue. So I'm so glad that Gwen figured out that she's like, oh, I get it. My dad made you promise. I don't know, man. I was watching this movie and like I said, it's a slow start. Not everything works, but there's not a whole lot. I don't know. I mean, I'm struggling to find things that I really hated with this movie because just when I was like, I will say it didn't have my full attention every minute. Like I was checking my phone a little bit. I was kind of like, okay, like I get the gist of what's going on here. But when I think of bad scenes, I don't really think of anything that sticks out too much. There's a funny scene too where one of the last scenes where Ben is in school with Peter and he's like, oh, I'm his probation officer. And he's like, he's got you on his computer, you know. And then I love how I'm like, oh, that could be really creepy. But then when Andrew goes and talks to Emma, and guys, I'm just going to use the actors' names now, I guess, because that's what I'm going to do right now. So, because fuck it. And so Andrew goes to talk to Emma, and then he's like, oh, you know, that's the photography team or whatever, or the debate team, he says. And she's like, oh, so I'm not on your computer? And he's like, well, and she's like playing it up, and it's really cute. And I'm like, I love that she's playing off of this instead of being like, ew. Yeah, there's more here, guys. I'm sure I didn't like, but that's all I can think of on the top of my head. Okay, guys, and that brings us to the score. And I have to be honest, guys, this is why I like doing these reviews, because these are fun for me, where I'm watching this movie, right? And as I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, well, especially at the beginning, guys, I was like, oh my God. I was like, is this going to be lower than Spider-Man 2 for me? I was like, this is a bad film. And then like the last like hour and 20, so similar to how in Spider-Man 3, the first hour and 20, I think, is very good. And then the end is kind of messy. I think it's actually the opposite for this movie, where I think it starts really slow. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if this is a good film. And I'm like starting to remember like why I didn't really like it as much. I don't remember liking it. And then I think a lot of elements in it got really good for me. And I was like, oh, okay. And then there's a point, that carjacking scene where he's sitting in there and he's like messing around. He's like, oh my God, a knife. No, that was the first time where I was like, oh, we're having fun now. Like, this is a fun movie. And then they just kept building on it. And then they introduced Dennis Leary's character. And I just thought it was like really fun. And so I had a score of like low. First, I was like high fives at the very beginning. And I was like, I don't know, man. And then I was like, probably 6, maybe mid 6s. And then I was thinking, it just kept going. And I was like, oh, I'm really liking this. And now talking about all the things I like, guys. And I thought I was going to have a lot more things to make fun of. I will say, though, really quick, I'm all over the map here tonight, guys. But I think as these reviews go on, my mental capacity just goes out the window. So I will say the Doc Connor stuff when he's turning into Lizard, I don't love that he was like, oh, I'm becoming stronger and faster. And he's like, humans are weak. So he's like, let's turn everyone into reptiles. And I was like, that's maybe not the best plan. Maybe let's think of something else. Hey, this super smart reptologist, whatever you want to call him, I know he's not like, he's really smart. Maybe don't be like, you know what? Fuck it. Everyone needs to be a lizard. Okay. Humans are weak. To evolve. We need everyone to just be lizard now. Okay. And I'm like, some people probably don't want to be lizards, dude. Probably a lot of people don't want to be lizards. Okay. Especially not when you're forcing it on them. So the fact that he's like, oh, I'm just going to disperse this into the city. And I was like, what, dude? Why? Don't do that. Definitely don't do that. And so that was weird. And I thought it was weird that he was like really fond of Peter initially. And Peter gave him the formula to solve the lizard stuff initially. And then he's like, oh, Peter will not get in my way. And I was like, bro, what? And then he like unmasked Peter. I don't know. Peter's unmasked a lot in this movie. I actually really like that about this movie, but that was another little scene or aspect where I was like, why do you loved Peter and now you hate him and now he's in your way? It didn't make sense. But anyway, guys, we are on the score portion here. This is a 7-2. I think this movie, again, just got better and better as it went on. I really thought this could be like a horrible movie. Like 50 minutes in, I was like, oh my God, I don't know. I didn't like Andrew's interactions. I didn't like, there were no action sequences there. I didn't really love the way the story was going. I was like, oh, I don't know. I loved Emma and Andrew's interactions, but I wasn't quite sold. And then he's going through in the warehouse doing it's that chain scene that I didn't bring up where it's kind of weird. I was like, how are you, like, why do you have just access to these chains, this warehouse? But he goes in there and he gives the first woo, and I was like, you got me. You got me, dude. And yeah, I just think it's a fun movie. And honestly, when I think about, so we'll get to the rankings in a second, but when I'm scoring this too, I'm thinking like, how is this as an overall movie? How are the effects? Are there any epic moments, which this movie had a few of them? And then like the score, all that stuff, the characters interacting with each other, all of that I'm considering when thinking of a score. And so again, I have an idea, and as the movie goes, I kind of like will solidify that or mold that out into being like, okay, is it closer to this or closer to this? And then I also consider like what I scored the other movies. And so I'm thinking about all that, but I want it to be as fair as possible. And so that's my score for this one, guys. And let's move on to the rankings. Okay, guys, so that brings us to the rankings here. So this one, if you guys have not seen, or so far, guys, we have number one, we have Spider-Verse. Again, probably not going to be topped. We'll see how No Way Home goes, but it would, even if No Way Home blows me away, which I'm kind of expecting it to, it would be hard for me to put it above Spider-Verse. So we'll see. We'll see how my thoughts are when it comes to that at the end here, guys. But for now, we have Spider-Verse 1. We have Spider-Man 1 at number 2. We have Spider-Man 3 at number 3. And then we have Spider-Man 2, which a lot of people love, which I hated, at number 4. And so I'm thinking about this, guys, and I'm like, okay, it's not better than Spider-Verse, right? If we start at the top here, it's definitely not better than Spider-Verse. And I was like, it's not better than Spider-Man 1. And so then I'm thinking, like, is this better than Spider-Man 3? And I'm thinking, and I'm like, you know, even though there's a lot of elements I did really like in this movie, I have an issue with the pacing, kind of. And I think part of me growing up with Tobey, I still have a soft spot in my heart for Tobey. And so Spider-Man 3 goes above it for me, but this one is definitely leagues above Spider-Man 2. So this one slots in at number 4, Spider-Verse, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 3, then this movie, then Spider-Man 2. So yeah, number 4 out of 5 for me. It's only above one movie, really, but I really liked a lot of things in this movie that they kind of laid the foundation for. And I'm really excited for 2 because I think 2 is supposed to be a lot better. And this movie did something that the other movies haven't done much of, except maybe Spider-Man 2 at the very end, where the credits rolled on this. Oh, guys, I didn't talk about that. They end this movie on a great note, which is something the Raimi movies did not do very well. When it's so heartbreaking to like see Gwen in school and Andrew standing there as Peter, and they like walking by each other, and like he's like physically like, dude, he wants to talk to her so bad, and you can tell. And Gwen is doing her best to like walk away, but they're both upset. You can just tell. It's like they're like, we just want to be together, but they both know that the right decision is for him not to be with her. But then at the very end there, he shows up late, which I don't know why he's late. Maybe he was just thinking about shit. But the teacher says, Mr. Parker, you're late again. He's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I promise it won't happen again. And she goes, well, don't make promises you can't keep, Mr. Parker. And then he's sitting behind Gwen and he whispers to her and he goes, those are the best ones. And I was like, oh, dude, yes. That means he's like, yo, and then she has a smile and it's like, what a way to end the movie. This is the first one that I was like, I'm so glad I'm watching the next one tomorrow night, guys, for the reviews, because I was like, I'm ready for Amazing Spider-Man 2. And obviously I remember the opening scene I can't wait for. That's going to look amazing, guys. But anyway, I'm rambling as always. But yeah, that's how our rankings shape out so far. Okay, guys, this one was a long-winded one. Again, I feel like I was really positive on this one, but I didn't want to score too high. And so I always have like doubts when I score these, right, where I'm like, did I put that one too high or too low? But the rankings and the scores are what they are, guys. I'm going to stick to them. I put a lot of thought into each one of these, so hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate you guys stopped by. Go check out the other content on the channel, of course, guys. If you did like the content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing. Every time we finish one of these, guys, that means we are one step closer to No Way Home, so I cannot wait, guys. Tomorrow night, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That'll wrap up this kind of duology here. And then, guys, we have the MCU movies. So then we got Homecoming, and we got Far From Home, and that is it, guys. And then we have No Way Home, which will be dropping and finishing this series up, at least for now, until we get Across the Spider-Verse next year. And then, of course, when more Spidey movies come out, which Sony's already said they're working with Marvel for like at least three more Spider-Man movies. So I'm like, I'll be here for that one, dude. Anyway, guys, once again, rambling. Once again, thank you. Appreciate you. Until tomorrow night, guys, stay swinging.